Hi, my name is Tanya Hallett and I'm from TIPT, which is Trauma Informed Practice Training. I am a mental health first aid instructor, a grief first aid instructor, and a Lego series play facilitator. And I do lots of training and advising in the areas of mental health, trauma informed practice for organisations, psychosocial safety, and psychological safety.
Welcome back to Do Yourself a Favour. I'm delighted to have Tanya Hallett back with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Tam.
We were going to pretend it was one long interview, but we're wearing different clothes, so...
We can't quite get away with it, can we?
I know.
No.
But we still coordinate. We can't even help ourselves. Without conversation, the tones match.
I nearly messaged you this morning, though, and said, what colours are you wearing?
I actually contacted you psychically.
Oh.
That's why you didn't need to.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate
You're welcome.
that.
It worked,
so
right?
Much. I
It
love
worked.
that. That's brilliant.
So it's so funny. I was thinking about you and I talking because we always have a light and fun time together talking about some of the heaviest subjects,
stuff, right?
Yeah. And today we want to talk about a couple of crucial areas. Let's start today. We're going to talk about everyone's favourite, bullying.
Oh, yes. Workplace bullying.
Yeah. And all the different facets of it, what it can be, what it can't be, and really life-ruining, right?
Yeah,
can be
absolutely.
life-ruining.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you want to start with some of the stories you hear from your clients? What's the most common things you'll hear?
Right. Yeah, that's actually a really good place to start. So I have a lot of people contact me about workplace bullying on, daily, weekly, depending on the times of year where you might see more of that. And it's really interesting what comes up. And there are so many common threads with bullying. And a lot of it is around essentially workplaces quite often have not provided adequate support for their staff member and they are not following things like fair work practices and, following proper psychosocial safety protocols. And then you've got people who are really distressed, very upset, who are coming to me saying, that's it. I have to quit my job.
Yes.
And I've been at this company for, 10 years, but
yes.
I need to quit. I can't keep this up anymore.
So is it normally that there's one person bullying them? Is it a peer more often? Is it a manager?
That's such a good question. Do you know what I find? Often it is that particularly if they've worked at an organisation for an extended period of time, there'll be a new person who comes in. It'll often be a new manager or a new team leader who comes in. And then the whole status quo of the situation is completely, the balance is totally thrown off.
Got it.
And that's often what I hear. And what I sadly hear from a lot of people is it's a new manager who's come in. And I will often hear that it's a manager who comes in who actually has very limited contextual understanding of what this person has to do in their job. And for whatever reason, there's sort of been a clash between this manager and this person.
Yes.
And then it becomes bigger than Ben-Hur ever so quickly.
Yes.
And what I'm finding a lot is there are people who have got, legitimate disabilities or legitimate issues around sickness and work. And under the Fair Work Act, we are expected to make reasonable and practicable adjustments to assist those people.
Right.
And there are a lot of workplaces who still seem to think that they are above the law, and they're not.
I wonder if do they know the laws and are avoiding them, or could they be literally not informed around what they need to know?
Yeah, that's also a really good question. So I'm gonna say something that my father used to say to me as a child, right? And he used to say to me, ignorance is no excuse.
Yes.
And when I was growing up, I thought, well, that's a bit harsh. I mean, I was a child,
yeah.
to be fair.
Yeah.
But really, ignorance is no excuse in the respect that this, and I always use this analogy, right? If you're driving 70 in a 60 zone and the Mr. Police Officer picks you up, or Mrs. Police Officer picks you up, or Ms. Police Officer, it doesn't matter. The police officer picks you up and says, hi, you've been going 10 Ks over, I'm writing you a speeding ticket. You can go, oh, I'm really sorry, I didn't realise this was it was 60 Ks and I was doing 70, but it's not going to get you out of the ticket.
No. And it's actually under the literal law, ignorance is no excuse.
Ignorance is no excuse.
Yeah. So one would argue people need to know. So you've raised a couple of things that I can ask more about straight away. So we have have this situation where someone new comes in, a new manager comes in, and a person who's been there feels that the manager isn't appropriate with them, leading into a feeling that they're literally bullying them. We'll define bullying shortly because it can be a misunderstood term. The thing that I've talked about recently here with Tammy Tansley on a post I did on LinkedIn is often when a new manager comes in, they won't understand because often they've never had the training or they don't have the natural EI to go, when I first come in, my job is to find out how the team works, find out about the people involved, find out about what their strengths and weaknesses are, be there for them, be the kind of power that we talk about in our leadership training at Discern, referent power, willing to be open, vulnerable, honest. They come in and go, I must prove myself as a leader, I must meet goals, I've come in to impress, and the sledgehammer comes out. And then what's interesting to me is, and we'll get this out of the way early because before we started talking on the video today and the audio, I said to you, what about the person who pretends they're being bullied because they just don't like being performance managed? So let's talk about both factors. Let's have a new boss come in who's really either an a-hole or just ignorant about their responsibilities. The person who comes to you and says, Tanya, I think I'm being bullied. You can tell from your expertise they're a good worker. They're not an unreasonable person making up a story. So let's use that one. And then let's use a new manager comes in, whatever approach they're using, the new person, let's say the manager is actually good, but the new person doesn't like the change and wants to be, for want of a better word, naughty about it and says, Tanya, I'm being bullied, when actually all that's happened is they're starting to be called to account. And often for years people haven't been held from a cowardly manager.
You're absolutely right.
All right, let's go. Good staff member, manager causing the issues. Let's start there. What do you think is the way that what should happen at that point? And then let's flip it and do good manager, naughty staff member.
Okay, love that. Okay, so first of all, when we've got a really good employee who's worked in an organisation for, and I would say if you've, and again, I'm going to use the Fair Work Act here. If you've had a person who's worked in an organisation for, 12 months to 2 years, and they have caused you no problems, that's a pretty good basis to go from, that this is an employee who is reliable, who has proven themselves to be a reasonable person at work. And when they ask for things like reasonable adjustments, you are really required to provide them. So this is one of the common things that I'm finding that I'm stumbling across in a lot of the work that I'm doing. And a lot of it is like, for example, you might have someone who has a medical condition or is caring for somebody, right? So let's use, those two examples. And it could be a medical condition like, so one lady I was assisting had issues with vertigo. And there's a few people I've spoken to about that. And vertigo comes on when it comes on. You actually can't, there's really a limit to what you can do about that. And unfortunately, there's also a limit to what the medical profession can do to help support that. Like there's physio and there's ENT specialists and there's bits and pieces, but it's actually kind of more of a chronic condition that you've got to manage. Now, she had been working at this organisation for a really long time. She had done an exemplary job while she was there. She had worked from home when required, when she couldn't actually come in on public transport. Anyway, new manager comes in and says, right, I expect you to be in the office all the time. And she's like, well, hang on a second. I have a medical condition that doesn't allow me to do that. This is something that I had in place with my previous managers, and I've always done, I've always gone above and beyond. I've always met my deadlines. There's never been a problem. If I really need to come into the office, I always come in via Uber if I can't walk in, but I do come in. And this new manager was like, okay, I'll let you work from home, but you've got to tell me what day that's going to happen. And she's like, well, I can't predict when I'm going to get the vertigo. I can't predict when I'm going to get sick. And so there's a couple of problems that happen here. First of all, we've got a manager who is being actually technically quite unreasonable.
Yes.
Right. And they're actually not they're not actually making reasonable and practical work adjustments. But the other problem was that prior to this manager coming in, there was no workplace support plan. There was no mental health support plan. There was nothing that had been documented to assist, nothing documented, nothing in concrete.
Right.
So the managers before had trusted her and,
Yes.
and everything had worked fine, right?
Yes.
And that's great. But then when the new manager comes in, the new manager's like, well, I've got no documentation. I've got nothing here to say that this arrangement has been agreed upon or that there's been success with this arrangement that was agreed upon before.
Yes.
And then they come in and they kind of lower the boom and they're like, right, we want doctor's notes, we want this, we want that, we want blah, 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 blah. And there's a couple of, and this is where this is quite multifaceted, right? And why I say to workplaces, you know, if you've got someone who has a disability, someone who has an illness, someone who's got caring responsibilities, someone who's got mental health struggles, it really doesn't matter what it is. You actually need to have created a workplace support plan for that person. If it's mental health, you also need a mental health care support plan. And if there's other issues around that, you should also actually have a risk management plan in place for that person too. Now, if you haven't got any of those things and you are jumping straight to performance management with someone, you've got a problem because you have done nothing. And there's nothing documented. There is nothing to show that you have done anything to support this employee. Right. So that's one of the biggest issues, I think, is that new managers will sometimes come in and there's like a list of things that haven't been done before they walk in the door because other managers had the trust or had whatever in the employee. And that's great, but nothing was documented.
Yes.
And we've got to remember that people have got every right to ask for the proof and the evidence of these things, right? It's reasonable. But what it's done is it creates so much stress for this particular person. And then it's sort of like the new manager could come in and the new manager straight away like, no, I think you're pulling the piss. I think you're taking advantage of the situation and no, I'm not prepared to let that happen. So they're coming in to kind of lower that sledgehammer. I'm not to be messed with. I will set standards and I expect you to reach them.
Yes.
And that can be a problem, obviously, because it's not fair to do this to an employee who and it's not the employee's fault that no plans were documented.
That's right, because
what the prime manager's problem.
Yes, and the organisation's problem, right?
Exactly.
So I can hear that what worked previously was the relationship worked and the history worked. Those documents missing, that structure missing means a new manager coming in, and let's guess that if they're coming in with a sledgehammer approach, they're trying to look good, they're nervous themselves or fearful themselves, they potentially, by the sounds of this story, don't have a great emotional intelligence. Can't judge the circumstance. So we've got all these different factors in play, and one would argue that the staff member immediately feels a lack of trust with the new manager.
So this was the thing, and this is what, and this is so often, this is the conversation I have to people that come to me for advice about this. My previous manager trusted me. I've never had this problem before. And that's also a red flag too, because my previous manager, I've never had a problem before. I've never been performance managed before. I've never ever not gotten along with my manager. My previous manager trusted me. And this is a massive issue that comes out because one of the things I say with, you know, things like trauma-informed leadership, you've got to build that trust, right, with your employee. When people feel like you don't trust them, it's one of the quickest ways to get offside with somebody, right? Because if people think that you don't trust them or you're treating them like you're a criminal, that like they're a criminal, or you're treating them like they're trying to game the system, most people out there are really genuinely just trying to do the right thing. There are always people who won't.
Yes.
Right, always. But there are most people genuinely want to do the right thing. And if you come in and you start demanding all of this stuff that years ago wasn't required to be in place, you can understand why that employee is upset about it.
Oh, absolutely.
And it does. That to me, I mean, that absolutely comes across as bullying because it's not that employee's fault that nothing was documented.
No.
It's the organisation's fault for not doing the right thing to begin with.
If I was going to define bullying as a non-bullying expert, I would say it has to be a behaviour that is repeated and somehow denigrates the person emotionally, psychologically, discriminates against them. There's two things that come up for me when you talk about this particular person and this particular circumstance. One is it's a good segue into, as I've professionally called them, the naughty employee. But in both cases, let's go to the naughty person, but then let's look at what would be the best next step to not make this thing bigger than Ben-Hur, right? So let's say that your person isn't your person. There's someone that has been very difficult and manipulative. And the reason the other manager has never said anything, because we see
because they're scared.
They're scared.
Yeah.
So they can I've had it with staff that have been very badly behaved, and the new manager or leader will say to me, they've been doing that for 10 years from folklore, but no one's ever told them.
No one's ever told them off.
And I say to them, they have a right to be able to say, and you can correct me, but I think it might be based on the Fair Work stuff you said, they actually do have then a defence to say no one has ever raised this with me before.
Yeah, they absolutely do.
Right? Because no one has.
No.
So if we make your person not your person, we make them a manipulative person. Even the most high EI manager coming in, as soon as they try and set boundaries, the person could claim unfairness, bullying.
Absolutely.
But actually the new manager is only doing what should have been done throughout the last 10 years.
Right. And now we've got a bigger conflict to untangle.
We really do.
We really do.
Okay, let's start with the good person. She's upset, she calls you, this is what's happening. Magic wand, what is the quickest, simplest, best outcome that could happen? Who needs to do what to resolve this for all parties?
Yeah, okay, so that's a really good question. So first of all, what you'd need to do is actually get medical documentation to explain that this is, that this is a condition, that this comes on, that there does need to be adjustments that has been made before. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I would have been contacting prior managers and saying, how did it work before, and were there any concerns around that? Then the third thing you need to do is create a workplace support plan. Right? And a workplace support plan, like I'm amazed that workplaces don't seem to do this for people.
I haven't heard of it a lot.
Right. No, I haven't either. Now, interestingly, and again, this might be because, as people will know, I am an education background. If we've got a really difficult student, we have to have behaviour management plans, or not behaviour management, but behaviour support plans.
Yes.
And positive behaviour support plans for those students who are struggling, right? And it's completely reasonable that we have those, because it's how we all going to work together to make this happen. And there is accountability. It doesn't mean that you give people carte blanche, but you agree to things, right? It's almost like a contract that you're agreeing to.
Yes.
So a workplace management plan is, for example, someone might have an illness, they might have a mental health issue, they could have a disability, they could have they could have caring responsibilities for someone that they need to be looking after. And a workplace support plan is essentially like, we identify what the issue is. We identify what is difficult for that person. So, for example, what are the triggers within the workplace that make things difficult for that person? What are the health triggers that make things difficult for that person? And then we look at, what adjustments need to be made for this person, right? So we're going to adjust, for example, we might need to be flexible about work and start times. Start times and finish times. Or it might be that you're partway through the day and you may have to leave because there's caring responsibilities, but you're still required to make up that work. So how are we going to put that into the plan?
Perfect. So let's imagine this particular woman comes to you, says, this is what's happening. She's got a manager. We will make them low emotional intelligence, nervous about their own role. Ideally, we would always say that the manager would say, mea culpa, I've made a mistake, let's settle this up.
Yep.
That would be ideal, where he recognises, she says to him, this isn't cool, if she's brave enough, because, of course, there's a power differentiation.
And there's psychological safety that comes into
big
play
issue
there.
Well. So it's very difficult for her to raise it. She may not feel safe enough to go to that manager. So we would say the normal next step would be to go to the manager's manager and say, listen,
and that's often what happens.
Right. I'm not safe to talk to Bob. This is how he's been with me. Can you help me? Now, if she's a normal staff member, she won't even know about all the things that you've just said, particularly if they haven't been in place before. So there's an element of mystery. Now, is it HR? Is it work health and safety? Who looks after?
This is such a good question. And, like I said, I work across multiple sectors and multiple organisations. It still blows my mind that people aren't on top of this.
Yeah.
But then I have to also go, like I say this to my husband all the time, like, to me this is basics, but actually I'm guessing that for years this has not been basic. So it's not fair for me to say that. But essentially we've also got an issue here. It's a mix of HR and work health and safety.
Okay.
And this is the other problem, is you've got the and I know you hate that word, human resources, but we've got your HR
Well, it is the
person.
word, so you're allowed to use it.
It is the word. So we've got HR, and HR deals with, these types of things, but it's actually a work health and safety issue.
Yeah.
Because it's actually an issue around actual physical health, but it's mental health and psychological health as well. So essentially what we've got is we've got an overlapping here. And this is where, for ages, people are sort of, saying you cannot be keeping your work health and safety people and your human resources people as separate entities. They have to intersect. And especially around things like psychological safety, there has got to be way more intersection than probably what occurred before, right? We're not separate. We're all part, and this is the ridiculous part, we're all part of the same organisation. We're all actually part of the same team. You might technically be work health and safety. You might technically be HR. But when situations like this arise, it's an intersect.
Yes. I think the reason that you find it so surprising is because all you work in is humanity.
All I work in is humanity. That's true.
And then if you look at how businesses have operated, we haven't really advanced much past forward, even around the way people work, their hours and everything else. There's such a old-fashionedness.
There is such an old-fashionedness.
And that love of the almighty dollar that drives everything.
Yeah.
Because I'm much more of your bent and am so passionate about people being treated as humans, it's very easy for me to understand where you're coming from. And then I think of the businesses we would work with, and they would almost be like my dog. When you say something and she doesn't know, she'll tilt her head.
They tilt their heads.
So when you say what was the plan, the care plan called?
I call it a workplace support plan.
Yeah, I don't know if I have
ever come across
it.
No,
I don't think so. Now, that doesn't mean the companies I've worked with don't have it, because I don't work in your area and all the rest, but I think I would have heard more.
They are not common.
Okay.
And what I keep sort of saying to people is, I'll be really honest, I hate administration. I hate documenting anything.
Of course.
But realistically, and there is an element of, we've got to cover our asses here. Like, let's be honest, everybody these days the society gets more and more litigious. So people are obviously very concerned about saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, and covering their backsides. I'm like, okay, cool. This helps you with that.
It does.
Because you've got something in place, but you have to also be prepared to follow that through.
Well, we say if you want to avoid difficulty, just set expectations.
Set expectations.
Don't clean
early.
up the right. If you set, if we had a magic wand, it was a different manager, different skill level, a different company perhaps with what they had in place. The manager would be able to say, all right, let's have a look at what your personal situation is. Let's get the documentation together. I don't know you, so of course I'll start by trusting you've been doing the right thing.
Yes.
But of course I need to, as your leader, I need to have certain things in place.
Exactly.
He would be able to contact HR, WHS or combination, get all the info. Really, it'd be like the old Seinfeld joke, cut, think about what you're doing here, people. Let's start this whole thing again.
Yes.
We can't start it again. Let's call your caller Mary. Mary's already very upset, no doubt, with the manager, thinking about what am I going to do? I'm going to have to leave. For me, there's not actually an easy next step for either Mary to take or the manager.
And this is the thing. The reason these situations get worse is they aren't actually easy, but they're not that hard either.
Okay, so magic wand, what would happen next?
So magic wand is you have you would actually have the manager start with, look, I don't know you, I'm new to this role, but I'm going to start by trusting you. But I also want to make sure that we've actually got documentation and actual plans in place, because at the moment there's nothing. So let's put this together. Let's work together. We'll get HR, we'll get work health and safety. Let's come together and let's create this together so that we've got a support plan in place for you. The other thing is when everyone comes together, everybody here's got accountability.
Yeah.
So people don't want to do this stuff a lot of the time because they think it's giving the worker carte blanche, like a blank check to do whatever they want. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not about that. It's about actually, here is the accountability that we've all agreed to, but here's how we're going to support you in this process.
Yes.
So we are going to be flexible with start and finish times, but you also have to agree that if you haven't been able to work that day to finish those hours, that you will log on later to complete it.
Yeah.
If there is a project that needs to be completed in a set time frame, you're going to have to find the way to meet that deadline as far as what's reasonable and practicable.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we basically go through and we look at things like that, because then we're saying to that employee, happy to work with you, but you don't get a free ride.
Yes. And that ability to, that carte blanche thing, I don't know why. I do think it's a generational thing or a historic thing, but there seems to be in many organisations the starting premise, two things are the starting premise. One, you can't trust anyone.
Yeah.
And two, I'm the parent, they're the children.
Yes.
It's so common for me to see organisations where it's just forgotten that the people who are not senior or not even managers are adults with adult minds, adult lives, families.
Other commitments outside of work.
And like you said, there are people, I've seen them, and for whatever reason they are naughty.
Yeah.
They are difficult.
Yes.
Often it'll be a personality disorder or something intractable, and we'll talk about that.
Yep.
But also it'll be, I say to people, I used to get very upset with service people who are rude or whatever. And then I learned, of course, I was raised with an iron fist around being polite and caring.
But not everybody's been taught the same thing.
And of course there's parents who've said to their children, get away with what you can.
Yeah,
do as little as possible.
There absolutely are.
And I know there are because they exist in workplaces, right? So we don't have a magic wand. We're calling them Mary and Bob. Mary is upset. Bob is not doing great. Is there a way with those two characters in play in their current, because of course what I would do is have Bob call Mary in, apologise profusely, get the paperwork. That's the ideal.
Yes.
If he's not capable, and let's face it, it's not looking like that, are we simply going to lose Mary, or are we going to start down a horrendous and long-running path of her claiming bullying, HR being involved, months or years of pain for everyone?
So this is the thing. If Bob cannot take his lumps and Bob can't call Mary in and say, really sorry, you know what, perhaps we didn't start off on the right foot. If Bob can't actually say, look, Mary, I'm new to this as well. And it actually makes, I really, really want to do well at this. So I'm sorry, I probably came down too hard on you. How would you feel about us getting a workplace support plan together, getting the documentation together and coming up with a plan for you? It is absolutely going to go down the long bullying route.
Yes.
Because that's what's happened. You in those situations, there's this, and it fascinates me because so often the wrong decision is made.
Yes.
But I'm like, look, this could be solved so simply, but you've got to be prepared to put aside the ego to solve it.
That's right.
Which is to admit, you know what, didn't handle that well.
That's right.
Because Mary has got every right to say, I'm not trusted. People are watching everything that I'm doing. I feel I'm being micromanaged. I feel I'm being bullied. And Mary actually is well within her rights to claim that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because Mary has had an agreement with her previous managers that has never caused a problem. She has never been required to provide any of this documentation. Suddenly she is, but she's also got people who are treating her like she's bad news. So she is essentially being excluded. She's being discriminated against. All of these things are happening, and Mary could absolutely claim that she is being bullied.
I think in her situation, our best chance of an easier resolution is the manager one above. If she does go that route, they would have to have a level of emotional intelligence. And this is a real wild card, right?
Yep.
Let's say that they do. They're able to say to their new manager, hey, listen, let's have a look at the Mary situation. She's not happy. This is why.
Yep.
Let me support you and her in kind of starting again.
Yes.
And that manager would coach their manager on what to do, including vulnerability,
and
honesty.
The other thing that I'm finding with these types of situations is this might be where your organisation, if you don't have the skills to do this, you might actually need to call in a specialist.
Yes.
Because this is the other problem. We've got a lot of people who are working in HR and work health and safety. Some of these situations are quite nuanced.
They are.
And we're expecting HR and work health and safety people who deal with very different things to suddenly know how to put all of this together when they've never heard of it before or never seen it done in practice.
Yeah, and often
you need
young.
to consult with a specialist.
Yes.
So call in a consultant, call in someone who has actual experience in this. Because one of the other problems is we've got organisations that are going, oh, just figure it out. Well, they don't know what they're doing.
No
one's told them. So stop expecting them to have a skill set that no one's ever bothered to teach them.
And they haven't had, I think, often the case with HR or WHS when I look at it in organisations, they literally haven't had the life experience because
there's a lot of that too.
Really, I mean, not to be youngest, youngest.
Youngest.
Yeah, it is ageist in reverse, right? I have seen some very clever cookies in this kind of world, and they're young, but they have a level of emotional intelligence, they have a level of nuance, and I've seen a lot more that haven't. And it's because often the kind of person that's drawn to an HR role or a WHS role is often a real lover of rules and meeting the rules, and they will be sticklers about what has to happen, but the humanity piece, like when I've dealt with
there's always a humanity piece, and it's not getting considered.
Yeah, and the managers I'll deal with who are telling me about what they're managing, I'll say, oh, has HR been a support? And they'll say no, and the no is that they won't look at the nuance, they won't look at both perspectives, they won't look. And that what you said before, there is such fear around saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, being somehow noted as that whole idea of saying, I'm so sorry I got this wrong. I think a lot of people would not do that because they think if I said that, I'm going to be up on, some sort of charge.
And the irony of this is when people can admit that they got it wrong, it's like, you're pouring water on that fire straight away.
And Mary's...
And it just makes such a difference. And this, what people don't understand and are still failing to understand, even though so much research speaks to the contrary, people who can admit that they've made a mistake are people you trust a heck of a lot more.
Oh,
and you've got a lot more respect for them. Why? Because we all make mistakes. None of us are perfect.
Yeah.
Right? So saying, gee, sorry, I stuffed that up.
Yeah.
Let's start again. And the amount of respect and relationships can absolutely be rebuilt on that, and very strongly a lot of the time, because someone's been, they've actually had enough enough understanding to go, I messed up. I didn't know everything. I was trying to do X, Y, or Z for this reason. I'm sorry. I didn't handle this very well.
I find it so easy to put myself in the shoes of the person who's been wronged, and having the manager say that. It's so healing. It is very unusual. And you can really imagine the person being willing to start again if they get a real apology.
Absolutely. And, and like I say, in some of these scenarios, and, a bit like what we'll go on to next, is when things have been left to go on for a really long time, when processes haven't been followed. I mean, it's really hard for a new manager or a new leader walking in. And it's like, oh, yeah, okay, none of this was put in place before. There was no documentation. There is no evidence. And then this person's coming in going, well, what am I supposed to do around that? And that's a reasonable thing to be to have an issue with. And that's not this new manager's fault. So it's sort of like,
I mean, the message is really for a new manager, whatever the circumstance they've come in, if they ask before telling.
Curiosity over judgment always.
Mary, tell me the story. What's happened so far? What do you do? Exactly. How did you manage? What documents have you got?
Absolutely.
Okay, you've been trusted. You seem okay to me, but I don't know. No documents. Right, let's see how you and I can set it up.
And also from a psychosocial safety perspective, because like I said, I do a lot of work around psychosocial safety, right? From a psychosocial safety perspective, this loophole where people have been given time to get their heads around it is closing. It's done. Now, if people are not showing to do the right thing, organisations are going to be fined and individuals can be imprisoned. The fines are high. It's going to happen to people, as it should, because there are plenty of people out there who are they have not upskilled themselves. They don't know. They're not doing they're actively not doing the right thing.
That's right.
If you have kept no documents, no support plans, nothing in place, and then you performance manage this person out and they claim bullying, you know what, your organisation should be on the chopping block for that. You've done nothing you were supposed to that whole time.
That's right. We had when I was interviewing someone else here, they were talking about a senior leader, and they said, has anyone actually been sued yet in Western Australia? And at that time, no one had been. And they said, well, we'll wait for that, right?
Yeah.
It's
coming.
I get it. And the thing that I get, fear is an incredible motivator. And if it gets us to more love, great. But actually the topic we're talking about is people not suffering at work. The law is there to help organisations that weren't able to do that without a stick.
Yeah.
But actually, what are we actually after? We're after lives not being ruined from working in an organisation.
Absolutely. Because so many, I mean, like, I don't know if I talked about this with you before. I've mentioned it in a few workshops I've done recently, but it's been like, I talked to a couple of people from Lifeline a few months ago, and they said that the majority of their calls for people who are thinking of taking their life are people who are experiencing workplace bullying.
Oh.
And they are having that much stress and trauma in the workplace from workplace bullying that they are considering suicide. And they're calling Lifeline about it. That's where some people are at. And they said that a huge volume of their calls are related to this. Now, that should tell us, just from a human perspective, that's not okay.
No.
That shouldn't be happening.
No.
But it is.
Yes.
And we have got to do better. And we can. It's not hard to do better around this.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is the not hard thing. When I was talking to Natasha Broomhall here, because, of course, this is a passion area of mine.
Yeah.
Well, yes, for her, for you. My guests in recent times have all been around this topic because of my passion for it and wanting the professionals who are out there doing the work like yourselves to have your voice as loud as possible, right? And she was talking about this idea of, fundamentally the idea around psychosocial risk is, and you and I have talked about this, there has to be psychosocial safety.
Psychological
safety for the risk to even be raised. Because if you're not safe to say I don't feel safe, then you can't
raise the risk.
Yeah, and in this case of Mary and Bob, where Mary's well behaved, a very long, painful process could be circumvented. Let's be real, unless Mary goes to the manager one above and they happen to be very good, we are in for the long haul.
You're in for the long haul. You're in for a long, expensive, painful process.
I mean, what's the most likely? Mary tries to get help from HR, they do something or not. Mary's pretty quickly on stress leave and then is on that for however long while nothing's resolved.
And then Mary can absolutely put in a workers' compensation claim now for psychological injury, and Mary is well entitled to do that.
And
Mary
much
wouldn't
money?
struggle to prove that. And this is the thing, like, this is when we look at the statistics around this, right? People who have psychological injury are off work. If you compare it to a physical injury, it's at least 3 times longer.
I was going to say it's much longer.
It's 4 and 5 times more expensive, right? So the average psychological claim, I think, is about 36 weeks long. And then the average amount of money that is being put into this is between sort of $58,000 and $80,000.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money, and that's getting higher, right?
Yes.
They were conservative estimates before. Now it's higher.
So there's an exciting thing about the fear-based motivation for me.
It excites me too, only because I'd love to say people want to do the right thing because they want to do the right thing, but they pay for the painkiller. They'll do something when there's
this is what I'm thinking. So our passion is the love, our passion is the humanity. Some people are on board, others aren't. And when the ones that aren't think I have to have systems in place, that is, I'm happy if it's fear and money that motivates that. And then all one can hope is that the managers at the most human levels and dealing with people in teams and all the rest are able to get the message around what has people feel appreciated, autonomy, respect, not micromanaging, seeing the whole person, creating, like we say, a positive emotional bank account where every
it's
time
money in the bank.
Right? I see, if you're my boss and I see you, most of the time I have a good time, I
Yeah.
feel safe and happy. And then when you need to raise something difficult, you can make a withdrawal because we've got tons of money.
Exactly.
This manager comes in with no balance
there's
and
no
starts
balance.
withdrawing.
Yeah, and it's really funny that you say this, because so interestingly, when you learn about classroom management strategies in education, money in the bank is one of the strategies. And that's called money in the bank.
There
It
you
is
go.
that time that you've invested with a student in knowing their name, finding out about them, checking in on them if they're not feeling good, helping them out when you may not have had to, or just going that extra mile with them. That's money in the bank. And when you need to make a withdrawal, you can, because you've put that goodwill there.
Yeah.
And if people understood that, it's such a simple concept. And if people understood money in the bank, it would be it would make things so much easier for people. If you are in a workplace and you know someone's name, you know something about them, and you do your best to make them feel safe and included, and you ask them, random questions like, how was your weekend? Or, oh, just checking in on you. You don't seem like you're doing, you don't seem like you're feeling the best. Like, it doesn't matter what it is. Every time you do that, it's a deposit.
Yes.
And then later, when we need that person for something, we
Yes.
can withdraw on that money that we've put in, that goodwill that we have been building up over time. It's a super simple concept.
And you know what, also connected to school, because organisations do often treat their staff as children, I find the staff will often act like children.
If you treat them like children, they'll behave like children.
Yeah, and then that whole idea of putting money in the bank, it ties into the other scenario where we've got the more naughty staff member, right?
Love that.